Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Taco Nome, and welcome to the reading stream on Twitch and YouTube. How is everyone doing today? Hope that you're having a good day so far, a good weekend, maybe even a good week. Although the week has just started because we are now on a new schedule for the reading stream. So, as I mentioned, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before then, that we will be moving the reading stream over to Sundays at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And well, here we are. So we have a new time. We also have a new intro. I don't know if anyone noticed, but we also have a new intro now as well. But tonight, we are going to return to the story of Clockwork Twist with Clockwork Twist, Book 10, Time, by Emily Thompson. For anyone who may be new to the reading stream, maybe you're thinking to yourself, now who is this Emily Thompson person? I've never heard of them. Well, allow me the opportunity to read their bio to you. Emily Thompson is a non binary author and artist originally from Northern California. Although they adore steampunk and all things Victoriana, they also write science fiction and fantasy. After studying film and animation in university, Emily changed to a Japanese language focus and studied in Tokyo. After receiving a language degree and spending a number of years abroad, they now live in Washington and spend most of their free time writing in coffee shops, painting, crocheting plushies, coding, and playing lots of cozy video games. And actually, I believe the author is perhaps still in chat or listening in the background. So I want to say hello. And you know what? Also, thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to read your stories on this stream. Oh, speaking of the author wrote, "It is so amazing that we've made it this far into the series. I'm so grateful and excited to be getting into my favorite book." Oh, of the 12 books, this is the author's favorite book, it seems. I am looking forward to getting into this book. So, as I've mentioned before in some previous streams, I started reading this series back in 2016, and I believe I made it all the way to book 5. I finished book 5, but I could not start book 6 because life shenanigans. So, it has been a real treat to not only go through the first 5 books again and kind of refresh my memory of what's going to happen, but to read the following books and to be surprised with every book. Because every time I see a book title or whatnot, I start trying to guess or calculate what the book might be about, some of the things that we'll see. And I will say with the last book, I was once again pleasantly surprised that it did not go in the direction I thought it might go. And even if it did go in the direction I thought it might go, I was pretty certain I would still be surprised. So honestly, if you're new here, and maybe this is your first time hearing this book, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, they're in book 10 already. I don't know if I want to keep going to listen. Well, I will say this. I do not think starting right now or whatnot will necessarily ruin the experience of the previous books. Standalone, I believe all the books are really good. That's my opinion as well. A consumer of this story, and I dare say I enjoy the story a lot. And the author wrote, "I wrote this book in my head for years, so by the time I got to actually writing, it only took me 6 weeks. Fastest I've ever written a book. Oh my. I cannot write that fast at the moment. I will say book 2 of my series, Corrupted Gene series. It took about a year or so. I'm a slow writer. It takes me a while to outline what I want to happen in the book, and then it takes me a while to actually write the book, and then the editing process, which I'm still in the editing process. But I will say last year, during the months of April and May, I wrote about 15 chapters, I want to say, for my book, which was basically the rest of the book. That may have been the fastest I've ever written, but I do not write very fast. So if anyone has read my book and you're wondering, where's book two? Apologies. I promise it is coming. It's just I am not a professional author. But we'll get there. Speaking of news, well, I just mentioned that I have been working on my book. Actually, I was editing my book a few hours before this reading stream, and I believe Mythical might still be in chat, but Mythical may say, no, you weren't. You were playing Monster Hunter with us, which is also true. I was editing before I played Monster Hunter, but I am still editing my book. I am almost done with this round of editing, and I believe there's finally, finally one more to go after this round. We're getting closer, but I do believe book three is going to be a little easier to edit. I have a better editing process now. Other news, again, Sundays, 8 o'clock Eastern, is the new reading stream time. One thing I have considered, and I've considered this for a while, is as you can see, this background, I've used this background for the reading stream for, well, ever since I started the reading stream about 2.5 years ago. Does that look right in my head? Yes, it has literally been 2.5 years. That looks right in my head. Or did I start in 2022? Oh my. Correction. We have been doing the reading stream for 3.5 years. We started in 2022, January, and we have been going ever since. Now, granted, we have missed a few days because travel, exhaustion, and so forth, but we have been going for quite a while. So this is the first time we actually did a reading stream on Sunday. So just to keep that in mind. Other news, again, if you happen to be an author or if you have a story that you would like to hear on the reading stream read out loud with my wonderful, impeccable, excuse the ego, wonderful and impeccable voice, then you can send me a message on Twitch, on YouTube, or Blue Sky. And I lost track of what I was saying earlier. That's right. The background for this image, this background image for the stream, I have considered changing the background image and just the layout overall. As you can tell, this is a very simple layout here. No camera, no further information outside of the image of the book and the background image. And I would like to change that going forward. But we will see. Other news. If the sound quality still sounds a little off, well, that is because everything is still out of my closet as we wait for, well, no longer the maintenance people, contractors representing the owner of the building, which happens to not be the management company. We are waiting for them to finish installing a shower above my closet because it was installed improperly the first time, and to seal up the hole in my closet that fell from the water damage. So I'm hoping by next Sunday that all of my things will be back in the closet. I can hang up some of my sound blocking material again because currently I cannot reach it. And hopefully the sound quality will be even better if it's not as good as it used to be right now. Other news, let's see. Oh wow, no, I believe we'll still have reading stream for every Sunday this month. Unless something comes up suddenly, there are no foreseen days where we will not have reading stream this month. Fingers crossed. As far as other news for the channel, I believe that is everything. I feel as if I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. However, before we do start reading this book, before we get into book 10, happy Pride Month, everyone. I know that times in the country that we're in, the US, are trying. I'm thinking of the best word here, and right now, trying our patience feels like the right way to put it. I know it's very trying, but I'm happy that despite all of this nonsense, it does not take away our ability to celebrate the people who want to bring in joy and happiness into our lives and honestly just want to live in peace. So, with that said, everyone, happy Pride Month, and I hope that it is a safe and wonderful Pride Month for you. I believe that is everything I have here, so let's jump into our book. Again, as always, try to get a nice copy of the book I'm going to read here. Also, just makes it easier, and it means I have to stand up while reading. Let's see here. So we're in book 10 of Time. Oh, wow. This was copyright 2019. Oh my goodness. Okay. It's odd to think about the things that were going on as this book was being published. Before we start our story, before we get into the meat of the story, I would like to take the time to read what has happened so far. So, if you are new to the series, this little intro is going to help catch you up to what's going on. So, previously in Clockwork Twist, Twist hasn't been in London in nearly a year. His life has changed radically from his solitary days under soot gray London clouds. He always thought he would die alone in his clock shop, never seeking out friendship or love, never having any sort of family, never leaving the familiar cobblestone streets, and he made peace with it. Now, everything has changed. He's engaged to marry the beautiful, sweet, and brave clockwork princess Mira. His closest friend is an intrepid, bold, and fiercely loyal sky pirate, Jonas Davis, and Twist even now owns a unique and technologically advanced airship called the Icarus, which has become his home. He now shares every one of his days with his crew, which include a capable hunter and airship expert named Kima, and her son, Pamut, who is a powerful young warlock. Twist has also found a few of his own blood relations. He's found his grandmother, who is the proud matriarch of a troop of gypsies and a powerful witch, and by extension has learned that he is distantly related to most of the troop as well. He knows that his mother passed away shortly after his birth, killed by the evil fae that still want Twist's death, but he heard that his father might still be alive, somewhere in the world. Jonas had a vision of Twist meeting the man, but hasn't been able to tell Twist much detail, or even when and where it's supposed to happen. With that, we have our tea ready to go. Actually, let's make sure it's steeped here. Give that a little bit more time. I'm looking forward to this tea, but we will talk about that soon enough. One moment. My throat's actually a little dry. Oh, that's unfortunate. That's almost empty. But with that, everyone, let us get into the story of Clockwork Twist, Book 9, Time. Sorry, Book 10, Old Habits. Book 10, Time, by Emily Thompson. We are on the very first page of the story, which is on page 9. And I also want to apologize in advance if my voices for the characters have changed. But with that, let's begin. Twist stepped off of the Icarus and onto the elevated wrought iron airship docks that reached high into the London drizzle. The brooding gray clouds hung low over the city, nearly close enough to reach out and touch, while the winding cobblestone streets and soot stained houses lay in a vast labyrinth that stretched to every horizon. Twist pulled his black coat a bit tighter around his throat, finding the blue silk of his cravat not nearly enough to keep the chill at bay, no matter how well it matched his waistcoat. Kima stopped to stand beside Twist at the railing and looked out over the city. She was now dressed in one of Mira's purple saris, her long black hair braided neatly down her back. As always, she refused the idea of wearing a skirt when formal dress had been mentioned and opted for the soft ankle bloomers and long tunic instead. The slender lavender scarf like sash complemented the outfit nicely, draping a few times around her shoulders and hanging to her knees. Twist smiled at her while she didn't notice, happy to see that with her confident posture and natural beauty, she looked like a very fine woman indeed. This is London? She asked him, her tone clearly not very approving. This is London, Twist answered apologetically. It's nowhere near as pretty as Paris or as colorful as Bombay or Tokyo, but it's still a decent enough place for a major European city. The sound of Jonas's laughter behind him made Twist turn around. Twist was slightly shocked to find that Jonas had actually fastened his own emerald waistcoat properly, for once. The rest of his light brown suit looked somewhat less fine than Twist, and his head of messy golden hair was defiantly bare, except for the black goggles resting on his brow. But the effort to make himself look at least slightly presentable was still apparent. Listen to you, Jonas chided Twist with a wide grin. What would old Vicky think if she heard you that way? Talking about London that way? Who's Vicky? Kima asked. He means Her Majesty, the Empress Victoria, Twist grumbled. The ruler of the British Empire, and I'd rather you didn't call her that. Ah, Jonas said with a knowing hue to his grin. There's that patriotic pride. You still got a bit of it after all, I see. Twist glared back at his friend. Great Britain will always be great, no matter the state of London. This is the only one city among hundreds under the rule of our honorable queen. Well said, darling, Mira exclaimed, joining them as well with Pamut at her side. Mira had buttoned a long wine-colored wool coat over her white silk dress and bustle, and now carried a cherry red umbrella in her white gloved hands to shield her expertly curled wire hair and tiny befeathered hat from the drizzle. Pamut, meanwhile, now wore a smart little gray suit, which Mira had taken him out to buy that morning. Twist wondering yet again if young gentleman had grown slightly during the night, and, oh, at just under 11 years of age, he was still small in stature but growing like a weed. Mira took Twist's arm, facing Jonas with pride. Now, she said, shall we be off? Mr. Harding asked us to arrive by 7 o'clock, but I fear we might be a bit late now. As they all began to move along the thin walkway of the platform and toward the stairs to the ground, Kima gave a sigh. Why do I keep feeling like these are the kind of people who eat with too many forks? They probably are, actually, Jonas said, mimicking her dismal tone. But at least we can have a bit of fun sniggering at the fancy people. Twist sniggered by accident, calling a warning glance from Mira. Kima laughed quietly at them both, trying to hide it behind a hand, while Jonas chuckled as well. Any rebuttal on behalf of fancy people was paused as they climbed down the stairs to the more open lower level. All of the long hallways, walkways, and cramped plazas of the multi level airship docks were bustling despite the lateness of the hour, and Twist kept his eyes on the forever shifting crowds. But with Mira at his side and Jonas at his back, along with Kima and Pamut keeping close and providing a bit more cushion for Twist, he managed to move through the crowds without much trouble. However, Jonas mentioned as they reached another staircase that led down to the ground, I'm really not so sure you need me at this shindig. Would you rather stay behind on the ship? Kima asked, a hopeful ring to her voice. Not necessarily, Jonas answered. After all, we're not far from Whitechapel. Twist stopped in his tracks, having just reached the wide, bustling plaza on the ground floor of the docks, and turned on Jonas with a warning look and accusing finger. Alistair explicitly said that he wanted you to come. He wants to hear all about your time in outer space with the dragons. Jonas narrowed his eyes at Twist. You just don't want me to have any fun. I don't want you to lose yourself in debauchery, you mean? Jonas shrugged, smirking. All right, Dad. Kima shot Mira a confused glance. What does that long word mean? Mira hesitated to answer. You don't want to know, Twist assured Kima sourly. And you, he said sternly to Jonas. Knock it off, you brigand. Come along now, Mira said, smiling at Jonas and Kima encouragingly. We all have a wonderful time at dinner. Not as nice of a time you could have in Whitechapel, Jonas grumbled while he and Kima both followed after Twist and Mira across the vast, crowded, and echoing expanse under the airship docks. What's in Whitechapel? Pamut asked. Don't worry, mate, Jonas said, patting the boy's shoulder as they all headed for the waiting cabs at the front of the docks. I'll take you there when you're older. No, you will not, Twist snapped at Jonas, appalled. Oh, come on, Jonas protested. A young man has to have a round view of the world. I agree with Twist, Kima pointed out. If you like it and he doesn't, then it's got to be something immoral. Jonas stopped dead before they reached the taxi rank, his face filled with wounded shock. Kima stopped as well, watching him with a suspicious eye. Jonas's expression slipped swiftly toward a guilty smile. Oh, do come along, Mira said, already waving at a waiting cab driver. You can argue once we're in the cab. We shall be late. They all continued on, and Twist handed the cab driver the telegram he received from Alistair, pointing out the address. But what is in Whitechapel? Pumut asked again, as he and the others began to climb into the black, handsome cab. All sorts of lovely sins, Jonas told him with a wicked grin. Sitting at the far end of one of the two facing bench seats, Pamut seemed confused by Jonas's answer, but clearly intrigued. When Jonas sat beside him, Pamut moved to ask for clarity, but Kima spoke first. I knew it, Kima said with a point to Jonas's nose. Pamut, stop asking. But Mom, Pamut whined. Yeah, Mom, Jonas whined too. Stop it, Kima said, slapping at Jonas's arm with her fingers, her tone sharp, but a smile fighting for freedom on her face. Jonas broke into a guilty chuckle, raising his hand submissively. Seated across from Pamut, Twist could only shake his head. He certainly could do nothing to help Kima when Jonas was so enjoying her annoyance. Seated beside him, Mira only sighed, clearly wishing her fellow dinner guests were a bit more civilized. Twist glanced across at the Native American huntress, the sky pirate, and the boy who'd been raised by fairies, and then at the woman made of clockwork beside himself. Poor Alistair had no idea what he got himself into, inviting them all along with Twist. Here we're going to take a chapter break. Apologies for the intro to the story. I think my brain was still in my own personal writing style for my book, and I do not know how to explain it. It is as if you have a certain way of speaking or communicating an idea or whatnot, but when you read out loud, your brain says, oh, this is how I would communicate it. So that word comes out instead of what you see on the page. It is something I'm still working on, but I will dare say, compared to when I first started doing the reading stream, I believe I'm improving. But I'll leave that for the audience to determine. Oh my goodness. That is really good. I'm going to set that there. From Mythical, he writes, that makes sense. What kind of tea, Taka? What kind of tea? Well, I would tell you after another chapter or two, because it is not quite time yet. But we all know what is going to come soon. And if you do not know what is coming soon, why, you're in for a treat. But before we go into our next chapter, thank you all for joining this reading stream, whether you're here live in chat on Twitch or YouTube, or you're listening to the VOD on Twitch or YouTube. I hope that you are enjoying the story so far, even though we just began, as well as the reading of the story. And I apologize for my mirror voice. I feel I do this every stream. I do not do a very good mirror voice, in my opinion, consistently. She is the hardest voice for me to do. But with that, let's go into our next chapter. The cab drove deep into the brand new, fashionably decorative, perfect little houses of suburbia, which clustered together at the edges of the city. Though each one looked unique for the colors of its paint or exact arrangement of rooms, they seemed to twist like an army of imposed normality, standing proud against London's harsher and bleaker realities. Every tiny little front garden sported pockets of well trimmed nature that were 1,000 miles from anything like the chaos and vigor of the actual natural world. Oh, what a charming neighborhood! Mira exclaimed, clasping her hands. Bloody suburbs, Jonas grumbled, his arms crossed. Twist chuckled at the dichotomy of his two friends, finding his own feeling solidly between the two extremes. Before Mira could grow very cross with Jonas, the cab pulled to a stop, distracting her entirely. Climbing out of the cab along with the others, Twist looked up at another house like all the others, lit brightly by the numerous street lamps along the lanes. This house was painted a delicate pale blue color, each window, door, and the square little stoop before the front door trimmed with flawless white molding. A pair of pink rose bushes stood on either side of the white wooden gate inside the prim little fence, like squat and sweet smelling sentries to guard the tiny garden, while a perfectly manicured lawn lay on either side of the short pebbled path to the door. A cheery, apologies. A cheery gaslight mounted beside the front door drew them in out of the dim, while each and every window in the house glowed with an inviting warmth. After paying for the cab and sending it away into the nearly silent little streets, Mira took the crook of Twist's arm and walked with him up the path. Twist climbed the few short stairs and rapped on the door with the hilt of his walking stick and waited, while the rest of his friends gathered behind him on the path. Not a moment later, the door opened to reveal a pale, homely young girl in a black and white uniform. Good evening, sir, the girl said with a placid expression and a working class accent. Are you expected? My name is Twist, he answered. My companions and I have been invited to dinner by Mr. Alistair Harding. As Twist spoke, the girl glanced around at the others in mild confusion. Her gaze found Mira's copper face, shining in the porch light, and struck with a light of true amazement. When Twist fell silent, the girl seemed to snap out of her trance. Very good, Mr. Twist, the girl said, opening the door wide. Please come in. Mr. Norris here will take your hats and coats. Twist entered with Mira and was struck instantly by the comforting warmth and pleasant aroma of the little entry hall. A bunch of fresh, fragrant roses stood in a china vase on a table beside a tall, curving staircase, under the bright light of a crystal encrusted gas chandelier. The walls were papered in blue, patterned with tiny little white flowers that reminded Twist of a girl's cotton sundress, and the floor was a lush pool of perfectly clean white carpeting. An older man in tails and white gloves offered a smile as he held out a hand and asked for Twist's hat. As Twist and his companions handed over their things to the butler, the girl vanished through one of the many doors that led off the entry. Not long after, a new face appeared, approaching Twist and his friends with a warm, welcoming demeanor. She appeared to be not more than a year or two past 20, but she walked with the confidence Twist had seen in Ozzy and Tasha. Pale as porcelain, with delicate blue eyes, her golden hair tied up into a flawless onion shape, the woman wore a flowing and elegant gown of silk that matched the exact color of the house. She also wore a decent display of diamonds around her neck, on her ears, and on one white gloved wrist. Mr. Twist, she said on a very high class accent, her smile as flawless as her front garden. I'm so ever pleased to. Turning the page. I'm so ever pleased to make your acquaintance. My husband has told me so much about you. My name is Olivia, Miss Olivia Harding. Good heavens, Twist exclaimed, somehow inextricably drawn along into overt pleasantries by her infectiously refined nature, as he offered her a shallow bow. Alistair never told me he was married, and certainly not to such a lovely woman as yourself. The rascal has done me a disservice, I assure you. While Olivia laughed coyly into her gloved fingers, Twist heard Jonas grumble quietly behind him about wishing he'd gone to Whitechapel after all. Kima snickered, but thankfully, Olivia didn't seem to hear either of them. Please, let me introduce my fiancé, Twist went on, hoping to cover any last hints of his friend's derision. He then went on to present Mira, who curtsied to their hostess and offered her own compliments, while Olivia seemed instantly enchanted with her clockwork beauty. Perhaps because she'd just been introduced to a clockwork woman, Olivia didn't seem at all perturbed by the more casual attitudes of Jonas, Kima, and Pamut when Twist introduced them to her. Jonas neither bowed to her nor offered to kiss her hand, while Kima merely said hello with a smile. Pamut did bow to her, however, possibly only doing so because he'd seen Twist do it. Oh, what a darling little boy, Olivia said. Showing no indication whether appreciated this or not, Pamut didn't respond at all. Please come in, Olivia said with a gracious smile. Dinner is nearly ready. Twist and the others followed her through one of the doors and into a large dining room with high ceilings and a long oak table that could have accommodated 20. A handful of other people were already seated around the table, each one dressed impeccably. Alistair rose from the seat at the head of the table as Twist entered. Oliver, dear boy, Alistair exclaimed brightly as he hurried to greet them. So good of you to come, he said, stopping short as Twist recoiled from a handshake and bowed to him instead. For once, he went on, not seeming offended at all as he leaned closer as if to impart a secret to Twist, we're in for a truly entertaining evening, I am sure, with all of your fabulous stories. Twist laughed politely and nodded. Yes, in fact, I've quite a few new ones to tell you. Splendid, splendid, Alistair said happily. Come, let me introduce you to the rabble. Twist and his companions were then introduced to those already seated in a long and drawn out process that was packed full of compliments and overt fascination. Most of them seemed to be related to lords or political men of some kind, and it seemed to Twist that all of them were quite proud of their own station. Twist was grateful that no one asked his. In the society of London, Twist was nothing more than working class after all, even if his skills were specialized with complex clockwork. He certainly had no relations to these people would count as honorable. Finally done with the introductions, Twist sat down in his chair to Alistair's left and felt as winded as he'd just run a race. Mira was seated to his left, and Pamut on her left, across the table from Olivia and a young man who Alistair apparently worked with. The others were interspersed with the rest of the Londoners, but Jonas made sure that he was placed directly beside Kima. The butler quietly slipped a stack of books onto Pamut's seat so that he might be able to easily more enjoy his dinner. Shall I commence service now? The butler asked Olivia. Yes, please, Mr. Norris, she replied, remaining daintily in her seat as he bowed and left the room. Here we're taking a chapter break. Second to Mira's voice, posh English voice, I'm also not very good at. So there's Mira's voice, accents, and posh English. But we do the best we can here on the reading stream to make it enjoyable. Even if I try to make Alistair sound very stereotypical rich English. Once again, I do want to thank you all for joining this reading stream and the support that you give these channels, whether they are likes or follows, subscriptions, bits, word of mouth, or just coming by, hanging out, listening to the stream. In fact, something I want to ask the audience who are here now, or perhaps if you're listening to the VOD and you think, boy, I wouldn't mind messaging Taco my idea about this, or my opinion on this, there is something I do want to ask chat. As I've taken a step back from streaming and started to delve into some other of my endeavors here, one idea came to mind for the reading stream. I've asked people, or started asking people, if they have a story, whether it is a short story or even a two-sentence story, if you will, I know that's a thing, or a whole book, if they would like for their story to be read on the reading stream to send me a message. Well, there is another idea I have as well, and this will be more for short stories. One idea I have had is to open up or go back to TikTok or Instagram and do mini reading streams, if you will, or mini recordings. So if I was to do this, more than likely I would get a story, I would record myself reading the story, and then put it on either Instagram or TikTok. I haven't decided which one I actually trust enough to go on. But it is another thing in the back of my mind. I'm curious to see what other people may think. And again, if you happen to have an idea or have an opinion, but you're not here live, but you still want to tell me, feel free to message me because I'm pretty sure I'm likely to see the message. From Mythical, he writes, that is a great idea. Well, we have to find people who would like to have their stories shared on stream or on TikTok/Instagram. There is also a very good chance that I will record some of my own stories as well and put them up because I've been writing a bit more since I've taken a step back from streaming for short stories. It is something I'm playing around with, but I think, I'm hoping, it is something I can do and keep up with. We shall see. Take another sip of tea. Hmm. And with that, let's go into our next chapter. As Twist had hoped, dinner was more extravagant than it was uptight or stuffy. The first course arrived in the hands of a seemingly endless parade of servants who left their offerings silently and nearly invisible. He didn't even notice the young man who filled his glass with sherry until he already moved on down the table, and Twist marveled when a tightly packed short tower of French beans and cream appeared on his plate without warning. Not eating herself, Mira added a pair of little golden potato croquets to Twist's plate from one of the dishes left along the center of the table. Veal, sir? A voice asked over his shoulder. Yes, please. Thank you, Twist replied out of reflex as the butler placed a perfectly dressed, small slice of meat onto his plate. A toast, Alistair said, raising his glass of sherry. Everyone else followed suit, falling silent and smiling to him. To our most distinguished queen, Alistair declared. The others repeated him, each taking a sip. Twist noted that Jonas drowned his entire glass without pause. A servant appeared at his side as if by magic and silently refilled the glass. Jonas grinned at this and muttered something to Kima, who broke into giggles and then shot him a warning look. And now, Alistair went on, his glass raised again, a toast to good friends and good tales. A chorus of "Hear, hear!" murmured around the table as the others joined him in this toast as well. Given the nature of the second toast, Twist wasn't at all surprised when Alistair turned to him with an eager grin. So, how about it, Ollie? He asked. What ridiculous nonsense have you brought to share this time? I've already told these good people all about all your tall tales, and just as I said, he added with a gesture to Mira and Jonas, you've brought a pirate and a clockwork lady along with you. The others looked at Mira and Jonas in wonder, as if they were both fascinating exhibits. Jonas stared sourly at his plate, but Mira smiled back to the others bashfully. Kima and Pamut, it seemed, weren't nearly as interesting and gained little more than glances. So, Ollie? Alistair asked, looking back to Twist. Please do share a trifle with us. The others around the table looked to Twist expectantly now, clearly intrigued by whatever Alistair had already told them. He put on a thoughtful expression as he took another sip of his wine and tried to decide on the best place to start. Well, you tell me, Alistair, he said casually. What would you like to hear? I spent a few days on a flying island where I was the guest of magical Japanese foxes, and also nearly a week atop the highest Hawaiian volcano, doing my best to help a pack of dragons leave the Earth and fly off into outer space. Ho ho! Alistair exclaimed in glee. That's far more ridiculous than your usual fare, Ollie old chap. Don't tell me you've been improving. Twist chuckled, noting the looks of scandalized interest on the faces of the other guests. Oh, my apologies, Twist said to Alistair. Perhaps I should start a bit smaller and tell you of the week I spent at a gypsy camp and the forests of the northern France. Or perhaps a lovely journey I took from Honolulu to Rio de... Apologies, I have a hard time pronouncing the city. Rio de Janeiro. Is it Janeiro? I believe it's Janeiro. Why do I want to say it's Janeiro? We're going with Janeiro. We're going to start that dialogue over again. Perhaps I should start a bit smaller and tell you of the week I spent in a gypsy camp in the forests of northern France. Or perhaps of a lovely journey I took from Honolulu to Rio de Janeiro through the towering heights of Machu Picchu in Peru. Surely my trips to Atlantis should wait after dessert. Olivia laughed, covering it with a hand.
Oh, how marvelous. Darling, I honestly thought you were exaggerating when you told me about your friend here.
I knew you didn't believe me, Alistair said, waving a finger at her with a smile.
But look, it's all true. Why, he's even brought an Indian along with him.
Actually, Jonas said, raising a hand, Kima's only dressed as an Indian. She's actually from an American tribe.
Even better, Alistair said. I'm sure you could tell us many strange tales as well, my dear, he said to Kima. I went with them to Atlantis,
She offered with a shrug.
Of course you did,
Alistair said on a bright smile.
Who wouldn't give it the chance? And you as well, Mr. Davis,
he added to Jonas.
I'm sure you have fantastic stories of your own. Why, you're a real pirate.
I'm a sky pirate, actually, Jonas replied smugly.
My mistake,
Alistair said, nearly beside himself with glee.
I couldn't possibly imagine what sort of wonderful nonsense a sky pirate might get up to. You shall all have to grace us with a tale or two before this night is through. But come now, Ollie, don't keep us in such suspense. As you wish, Alistair,
Twist said.
Darling,
he asked, turning to Mira.
What story do you think I should tell?
Mira smiled back at him, her demure guise packed tight with pride.
Why don't you simply start from the last time we saw Alistair? I think that telling him all about the Zephyrin and Hala would be a lovely place to start. Very well,
Twist said, turning to Alistair with a wicked glee of his own.
I was in Melbourne, Australia, the very day after you and I last met, when the sky suddenly filled with a violent rainstorm.
As he went on, telling of how the tall, dark stranger appeared to arrest him and Jonas, and then turned into a giant mirror black snake dragon with a stovepipe hat before trapping them in a torrent of rain. Twist let himself get utterly lost in his tale. The women at the table gasped in shock at each frightening detail, while the men let out exclamations of alarm. But they all fell totally silent as if bewitched, as Twist told them of the lavish submersible shaped like a golden crocodile and Zephyr's beautiful Jinn companion. Mira added minor details when she felt that Twist had skipped over something, but Jonas merely chuckled occasionally and seemed perfectly content to only listen. Having heard little of this themselves, Kima and Pamut listened with just as much interest as the others. Alistair and a few of the Londoners asked for clarification on bated breath whenever the trials before Twist in his story appeared insurmountable, and then they gave great sighs of relief when Twist told of the resolutions. Twist easily moved from moment to moment of his memory, finding no reason to exaggerate or embellish as he went. The dinner courses passed from one to the next while the wines changed to match, but Twist soon realized that his extraordinary tales had captured his guests' full attention. He made special note to mention the meal from time to time, complimenting the cooks and the lavish array of the offered dishes, but someone always spoke up to direct him back to his tales. And so, Twist led them all through the city of magical creatures hidden at the South Pole to Inari's flying island and the dragon's stronghold on top of Mauna Kea. As the tale wandered through meandering the dragon's astrolabe and the battle of rooks and ciphers that had erupted suddenly above them, Mira began to take up the story when Twist's voice grew fatigued. He happily let her continue in his stead, adding details as she had done when he had been speaking, and let himself rest somewhat during the delightful third course of roast mutton and stewed pears and sultanas and wine sauce. He fully expected that someone else at the table might eventually speak up to tell their own tales or whatever gossip might be circling London these days, but to his surprise, no one seemed at all intent to do so. Instead, as Mira struggled to explain the curious feeling of floatings as if weightless in orbit above the Earth, the entire dinner party remained enraptured. The fourth course and then the fifth passed under the forks of the diners before Twist began to take up the storytelling himself again. By now, he was speaking of gypsies, dragon's blood, and vampire strongholds.
And was the vampire's husband still alive?
One of the other guests asked, nearly fainted with dread.
Indeed he was, Twist answered. He was a bit ragged from the ordeal, but still very much alive when we found him. Oh, thank goodness, a lady mentioned, fanning herself with a lace fan. In fact, Dr. Rose remained in good health even today, Twist added. We just recently saw him a few days ago on the slopes of a erupting volcano, but I'm getting ahead of myself, he added with an apologetic smile as the guest's ever resilient alarm rose again. Hoping to skip over everything to do with his own involvement in the legends of fairies, he swiftly mentioned only that they visited some of Jonas's family in the gypsy camp after spending some time in the charming underground city of Tamaracet in the center of the Sahara. He also didn't mention finding Idris off his head on in an opium den and simply said that they ran into the jinn and his gentlemanly baboon companion while waiting out the sandstorm. Finally, as the last of the fifth course was cleared away, Atlantis took center stage of his tale. Oh, but forget the strange city at the bottom of the sea, Twist said, spotting something extraordinary emerging from the kitchen. What an amazing dessert! A tower of glistening, transparent jelly of green, red, and white stripes, nearly 2 feet high on its silver platter, was being placed on the center of the dining table. Behind it, another monstrous construction of sugar, cake, and bright pink jelly, with the head of a pineapple sitting atop it like a crown, was placed as well, followed again by yet another. For once, the dinner guests' concentration was broken. They looked on their dessert with amazement, clapping as yet another fantastic creation appeared, this one clear and containing a beautiful collection of colored berries. What is this? Kima asked Jonas, having taken a taste of a bowl full of delicious looking vanilla ice cream and sticky red jam. It's so cold. It's cold ice cream, love, Jonas answered, helping himself to some as well. I just adore ice cream. You got a very good taste in desserts, Alistair. Alistair laughed good naturedly. Thank you, sir. I love it too, though Olivia tells me I eat too much of the ice cream. Well, you do, Olivia said with a demure giggle. We're always running out. The other guests laughed at this, each digging into their own favorite desserts. Mira made sure that Twist got a bit of all the offered treats, while she clearly enjoyed the look of them all. Pamut, meanwhile, seemed beside himself with delight as he savored the taste of each and every sweet treat. Oh, I do wish I could eat as well, Mira mentioned. This is all so beautiful. I'm sure it's quite delicious. Oh, it is, Twist said, smiling at a bit of wiggling jelly on his spoon. Simply capital. Your chefs have truly outdone themselves. Mom, can we eat this sweet stuff more often? Pumbut asked excitedly. Once in a while, yes, of course, Kima answered, clearly enjoying her own ice cream. I want to eat this all the time, Pumbut said happily. Thank you, sir and madam, he added to their guests, to their hosts. Olivia smiled back at him warmly. You're very welcome, sweetie. I'm glad you like it. Now, Alistair said with purpose, turning to Twist, I believe you were telling us about a mythical lost city on the bottom of the sea. Oh, yes, Twist said casually. Well, once I got the lights on, Jonas and I could see that we were indeed under a giant glass dome, deep beneath and underneath an unknown ocean. Without any hesitation at all, the entire table's attention dove right into the tale. Twist didn't mention anything about Storm, but simply said that the Rooks had discovered Atlantis and asked him to help them ferret out its secrets. Kima made a comment about the Rook's massive manta ray ship, which called up a question from one of the other guests. Seeming surprised at her own enjoyment of relating some of the story herself, Kima took the guests on through joining the Rooks on their enormous ship and heading to Atlantis. Everyone listened to her with just as much attention and curiosity as they had given Twist. They watched her tell the story the way she remembered it, and was happy to hear her skip over everything about the legend of the witch's son and rescuing Pamut. He felt reassured that none of the guests' questions, unprotected as they were, without any magical charms,
might call undue attention from any listening fae. Twist sipped at his little glass of port, feeling stuffed with good food and gently tipsy from all of the different wines, while Kima summed up the Atlantis adventure and took them all to Nassau. Now that he was longer no long now that he was longer the center of attention. Apologies, I think there's a word missing here. Now that he was no longer the center of attention, Twist's mind began to wander. Even though he lived every single day of the tale he woven for Alistair's guests, he silently began to realize just how strange and fantastic it all was. Of course, the guests were fascinated and enthralled. He would be himself if he was anyone else. He always known that his life was an odd one, but as he listened to Kima telling the others about picking up a random pirate and buying a new airship with gin and gold, for a moment he could clearly he could nearly see himself from the guests' perspectives. These people were, after all, the exact sort of comfortably wealthy, socially secure young Londoners that he used to think of as impossible to relate to or even hope to interact with. He'd grown up an orphan with not a penny to his name, nor a name with any status of his own whatsoever. Back in those bleak, empty days before Arabelle had first taken him away from London, he could never have imagined he would ever attend a dinner party like this one, let alone be the center of positive attention at one. And now, sitting beside his clockwork princess, he mused that these people seemed homely in their nativity, naivety, naivety. There we go. And now, sitting beside his clockwork princess, he mused that these people seemed homely in their naivety and charming with their simple little lives. They were no longer superior to him in any way, and their world of politics and position seemed absurdly mundane compared to the life he now led. It was staggering to believe just how far he had really come, just by stepping outside of his sheltered existence one single time. He glanced around at Alistair and his guests, seeing that they were each just as bound by unseen limitations as he once had been. Surely, if any of them left home as he had done, they would find their own princesses to rescue or their own dragons to battle. But would they even go? Or would they remain home, safe and boring, given the chance for true adventure? Perhaps that was truly the most usual thing about Twist. With that, we're going to take a chapter break and take a nice sip of tea here, for no particular reason. Mm. Oh my. Yep, that's still very good. For anyone who may be wondering, why Taka? What kind of tea are you drinking tonight? Well, it is one of my favorites here. This is The Fairy Queen, which seems very apt for a story containing fairies that want to murder you, but this Fairy Queen does not want to murder you. The ingredients are white tea, peach, lemongrass, lime peel, and rose petal. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, my Taka, that tea does sound criminally delicious, where can I find it? Well, allow me the opportunity to tell you about a special little tea shop in the Pacific Northwest, nestled on the coast of the Pacific Ocean in Seattle, Washington, called Friday Afternoon. That's right, it is time for Friday Afternoon, the tea shop in Seattle, Washington. If you go to the website, www.fridaytea.com, you will find a wide variety of teas that I'm very sure will tickle your fancy. Now, because it is June, which means the spring rotation is done, we are now in the summer rotation, but for this month only, for this month, first of all, if you're a child listening to this stream, hello, welcome to the reading stream. Also, why are you listening to the reading stream? This channel is rated M for mature. But I can't stop you, and I will not stop what I'm about to say next. So, everybody, for this month, if you want some sluts, let me tell you about this special tea. This tea is literally called Slut for Peach, and it looks very delicious looking at the picture. Now, as I said, this tea is only available, actually, all the slut teas are only available in June. So if you want a slutty tea, now is the time to get it. And the ingredient goes, or the description goes as follows. Precious, perky peaches present a playful palette, partnered with pops of polished pastel. A lot of peas there, if you will. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Ingredients: peach, black tea, pink and orange confetti sprinkles. There's a little asterisk there. Vanilla oil, natural peach flavoring, pink and gold luster dust. Another asterisk. So, the pink confetti contains sugar. Ooh, apologies. Sugar, vegetable juice, palm oil, gum arabic, cornstarch, dextrin, water, xanthan gum, carnauba wax, mica. The orange confetti contains sugar, cornstarch, oh my, how do you pronounce this? Hydroxypropyl. I believe that's correct. Distarch phosphate, hydrogenated palm oil, water, gum arabic, dextrin, xanthan gum, carnauba wax, artificial flavor, mica pearlescent, annatto. I have no idea what annatto is. The pink luster dust contains mica, titanium dioxide, E171, rice extract, and red number 3, E127. Gold luster dust contains mica, titanium dioxide, E171 again, yellow 5 and 6, lake, rice extract, red number 3, blue 1, lake. And it has one rating so far. It is 5 stars from last year in July. The rating goes delicious and delightful. When they say peach, they mean capital P peach. What a lovely tea, perfect for the summer. Again, the tea is called Slut for Peach, and there are all kinds of sluts on this page. There is the slut for apple, slut for orange, slut for lemon, slut for peach, slut for cherry, slut for blue raspberry, and last but not least, slut for guava. Again, a lot of sluts here. And they're only available in June. So, if you want a slut of your own or any other teas that may tickle your fancy, well, go to Friday Afternoon, the tea shop in Seattle, Washington. Again, the website is www.fridaytea.com, www.friday like the day and tea like the drink.com. And again, this is not a paid sponsorship. This is completely unsponsored. I just like talking about their teas. No, no one's holding a tea bag against my head saying that if I don't read this script, then they're going to do something horrible to my family. No, no, no. No one's here. It's just me in this room, hopefully. And I enjoy their teas. So, there you have it. And I'm going to continue drinking my Fairy Queen here. Mm. No, I think last reading stream I said Anansi's Web might take first place, but I think the Fairy Queen is making a comeback here. That is so good. I feel I need to check. I need to see if I have any Clockmaker tea. You know what? While we have the opportunity, let's take a look. Is Clockmaker tea available? It looks as if it's no longer seasonal. Oh, I thought I had to wait until September. Looks like I can get it sooner than later. Okay, I need to put in an order soon. Who knows, maybe I'll order a slut as well. That sounds terrible. Let me put this back into context here. I'm talking about tea and not people. Just the tea. And tea as in actual drinkable tea. Nothing insidious there. Nothing salacious except for the name slut for, well, name of fruit. I might get slut for orange. I like orange and lemons. I can see myself as a slut for citrus. But again, I'd probably do put in an order soon so I can have those teas come in. Oh, that could be fun. And we have a message from the author here, Erudite. I like the idea of shorts too. Sound like copy pasta, but I'm sure you'll find great stories. Quite possibly. I am hoping to find not just stories that everybody knows, that's already been published and maybe been around for over 100 years, but news stories. I believe I may have said this before in the reading stream, but one thing I wanted the reading stream to be was a way to showcase other stories, maybe that are not that popular or that are not as well known. For example, there's a reason why I do not want to read a story like Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I mean, they're great stories, don't get me wrong. I do like those stories, but everybody knows those stories. So that's where we are. We will see how they go. But again, if you have a story or a book, novel, whatnot, originally I said preferably published, but you know what? Even if it's not published and you still want to share it with everybody, feel free to send me a message on Twitch, on YouTube, or Blue Sky. And part of my revamping for the stream image, the background and what I have on the stream, at some point I will also put my socials on the screen as well so that it's a little easier to find me if you want to send me a message. Hmm. Actually, we're going to take one more sip of drink here before we go into our next chapter. Hmm. It really is a good tea. And once again, everyone, thank you for joining this reading stream. Hope you're enjoying the story as well as the reading of the story thus far. Hope that you are, well, I already said that part, that you're enjoying the story, and that I do truly appreciate all the support that you give this stream. I believe, I believe my eyes are ready. I believe my voice is keen. Hopefully, we'll do a very good job here, so let's go into our next chapter. The dinner guests remained in their seats long after the meal was done. When the story Twist, Vera, and Kima told had finally ended, the other guests took up the conversation, marveling over moments in the story and sharing their own thrills at hearing it. Twist listened with a pleased and comfortable air, assuring them when asked that yes, that was exactly how things had happened. My word, one guest said with a sigh, shaking his head. I honestly don't believe I've ever heard such a tale. I think you'll find, I think you will all find, Alistair said with a proud smile, that I'm a man of my word. I told you you'd be treated to wonderful tales of adventure and absurdity, and so you have been. The others laughed at this, and some began to applaud Twist and his friends. Can you imagine? One lady said excitedly, if any of it were actually true. Please, please, a man said, raising his hand. I think I've had quite enough excitement without suffering such a thought as that one as well. But it is all true, Kima said, frowning at the Londoners. Pama looked around at them all, far too bewildered by their disbelief, to speak up as well. Of course, said the man beside her at the table, giving her a placating look. Many of the others shot her equally skeptical smiles while Kima stared at them all in alarm. Jonas put a hand on her arm comfortingly. But
Look there,
she said, pointing to Mira, who looked back at her, somewhat startled.
if none of it was true, then where did she come from? She's made of clockwork. Oh, well,
Another lady said.
I'm sure it's some very clever trickery, like a magician's trick, perhaps.
She added, looking knowingly at Mira.
This lovely lady is wearing a very elaborate costume.
Mira seemed bewildered to have her very existence questioned so easily. Twist patted at her hand, giving her a silent glance, pleading with her not to defend herself. It would clearly be pointless to do so, after all. If they could hear their entire tale and spend hours with Mira and still not believe that she was who she claimed to be, then they never would. Mira seemed to sense his thoughts well enough and remained silent, forcing on a smile.
Now,
Alistair said, his hands raised to calm everyone. He looked to the lady with the costume theory.
a clever girl never asks how the trick is done. It's simply more fun to enjoy the magic, isn't it?
Twist's opinion of the other guests dropped instantly as they all nodded at Alistair's argument, clearly still thinking Twist and his friends were nothing more than extravagant liars. But then, of course, he expected little else at the start. It seemed that, given the choice to step out into the real world, none of them would even understand the offer. It wasn't really their fault. They were simply too deeply entrenched in their own fantasy world. Jonas leaned forward, placing his now empty port glass on the table. Every man's reality is somewhat different than others, after all, he offered.
If you believe we're lying this whole time, then, to quote the end of another mad tale, if we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended.
The others at the table laughed, instantly recognizing the line from Shakespeare's play. Jonas continued, while a handful of others, Olivia included, joined in to speak the lines with him.
That you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear, um, something, something,
He added, clearly forgetting some of it and calling more laughter from the others.
and this week in idle theme,
Olivia continued confidently.
no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest puck, if we have unlearned luck now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends our long, else the puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends.
The table broke into bright and happy applause. Twist, Jonas, and Mira all joined in. Kima shot her son a glance, prompting him to join in as she did. Pummett seemed disturbed, but he said nothing as he complied. Well, remembered, Jonas said to Olivia. I always forget the middle bit. Olivia smiled coyly.
Oh, I just love Midsummer Night.
My, Alistair said on a sigh, looking up to the golden clock resting on a mantelpiece across the table from where he sat.
It is indeed getting late, isn't it?
As if recognizing this comment as a sign to depart, the other guests instantly began to mention their own fatigue and wish for sleep. They each rose from their seats, one at a time, and offered Olivia kisses and Alistair handshakes as they complimented them on the lovely meal. They then each took a moment to tell Twist and the others that they would surely have wonderful dreams all week, thanks to their fantastic tales. Twist did his very best to accept their thanks and praise for what it was, whether or not they believed a single word he said. As the guests queued up to retrieve their hats and coats from the butler, Alistair pulled Twist aside with a silent gesture.
I just wanted to thank you again for coming tonight, Ollie,
he said in a hushed voice while no one else seemed to notice.
Of course,
Twist replied.
Thank you for the invitation. I had a wonderful time. Good,
Alistair said with a nod, glancing about to be sure no one else was eavesdropping.
But just between us, Ollie, I want you to know that I know you and your friends didn't breathe a word of a lie.
Twist looked back at him, surprised, and was unsure how to reply.
These city folk might not believe you.
Alistair said with a smirk at his as his guests. Alistair said with a smirk at his guest's back.
But I was there when Jonas fell from the sky in a spaceship, and I know that your lovely bride is, indeed, the Clockwork Princess herself. I believe you, even if they don't. Thank you for telling your stories. Please do come back any time you can and tell me more of them.
Twist, rather impressed with his friend, smiled at this.
I most certainly will. Thank you for saying so, Alistair.
The line shortened swiftly ahead of Twist, and he took his top hat and walking stick back from the butler. He then offered his hostess a bow and a few kind words of thanks, she replying with a warm smile, saying all the right things in return. Farewells and goodbyes began to echo about the little entry hall, making Twist feel a bit dizzy as he struggled to reply to them all. To his great relief, however, no one managed to catch him in a handshake or any other physical custom. Outside, Twist found that one of the servants must have run out to call a few cabs, which now stood waiting in a line before the little house. The dinner guests made swift work of climbing aboard one another, leaving Twist and his companions with the last ones to themselves. Alistair and Olivia stood on their stoop and waved goodbye as the cabs began to move away into the night. Sitting in the corner of their cab, exactly as he had before, Twist pulled out his pocket watch as the cab pulled away from the house. It was later than he expected, already past midnight. Glancing up to the others in the cab, he saw that only Pamut looked at all tired from their evening, already half asleep sitting beside Jonas. Everyone else seemed wide awake, but Pamut's hat sat in his lap while his little body swayed a bit with each turn, and his eyes seemed to struggle to stay open. Noticing this as well, Jonas draped an arm around the child, letting him rest against his side. Pamut took the offer immediately, his eyes falling softly closed.
Well, I didn't expect that reaction.
Kima mentioned, looking troubled. Sitting beside her, Jonas looked towards her with a pity. You really thought those townies would believe a word you said?
But it was all true.
Kima protested. Does this neighborhood look anything like reality to you? Jonas asked, gesturing to the suburbs out the windows of the cab. These people wouldn't recognize the real world if it slapped them in the face, let alone if it joined them for dinner. They're comfortably numb, and they're proud of their own naivety. They don't want to see the world as a scary place full of monsters.
The world isn't that bad,
Kimo grumbled, looking out through the window sadly. We know that, Jonas said, but then again, we're not too afraid to see it.
Well said.
Twist remarked. Jonas smiled back to him in thanks. Kima sighed and shook her head.
At least the food was good.
Twist nodded, glancing out the window at the city as silence fell over the cab. They were turning out of the suburbs now, driving back into London itself. Twist felt instantly more comfortable surrounded by tall buildings and dense alleyways rather than the prim little houses. Even at this late hour, there were still plenty of people out in these streets. The murmur of the light throngs, the amber glow of the street lights, and the soft London drizzle struck him as deeply familiar, despite how long he'd been away. As the cab passed by a chemist, Twist suddenly realized that he recognized the homely little shop. Half a block later, an ancient bookshop moved by their windows as well, and even with its windows black and signs dim in the midnight gloom, Twist knew it instantly.
Dear,
Mira asked him, having noticed that he was suddenly alert.
what is it?
Driver, Twist called, tapping loudly on the cab's ceiling with his walking stick.
Halt a moment, if you please.
Twist? Jonas asked, clearly surprised. He was too excited to respond as the cab came to a sudden stop on the side of the road. Twist leaped out through the cab's door and looked about the street in wonder, his heart pounding. Yes, he was exactly where he thought he was. He knew every shop on the street, and to his astonishment, not a single one seemed to have changed at all.
Darling, what's the matter?
Mira asked, leaning out of a cab window. I don't think we're in trouble, Jonas mentioned to her, watching Twist carefully through the open door.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Twist said to them, laughing at how strange he must appear.
I was just astonished to find myself here again. I didn't realize where we were, but I grew up on these streets,
He added, stepping closer to the cab again.
The orphanage I grew up in is right around that corner, if it's still there at all. Really?
Mira gasped in excitement.
Oh, please, let's have a look around,
She said to the others.
You want to look around?
Twist asked, surprised. Of course, part of him wanted to stroll through these streets as well, even if only out of nostalgic curiosity. But Mira had no history here.
Of course,
She said, already moving to step out of the cab.
I know nearly nothing about your childhood, you know.
She added to Twist admonishingly as he offered a hand to help her down to the street. But it's the middle of the night, Jonas protested, grinning down at them.
I'm not tired.
Mira said with a shrug.
Are you, darling?
Twist chuckled and shook his head.
Not really, I must say.
Pamut is nearly asleep already, Jonas mentioned.
No, I'm not,
Pamut muttered sleepily, rubbing at his eyes.
I'll take him back to the ship,
Kima said, smiling at her son.
I've had enough of London for one night. You go ahead and have your walk.
Well, Jonas said, stepping out of the cab. I'm not tired, and I'm curious as well. Would you two mind if I joined you?
Not at all,
Twist said, while Mira smiled to Jonas. Mira quickly paid the cabbie for the trip back to the airship docks and, along with Twist and Jonas, waved goodbye to Kima and Pamut as the group split up. She then turned to Twist, taking the crook of his arm and holding her red umbrella over them both in the light drizzle.
Now then, darling,
She said with eager excitement.
Show me where you grew up.
Okay. I believe here we will call the end of the reading stream. Honestly, I wanted to know more about where Twist grew up as well, but I believe we can save that for next Sunday. I still have to get used to the new time here. But for next Sunday, we will find out more about Twist's upbringing, I suppose. Everybody, thank you for joining tonight's reading stream. I hope that you enjoyed the story as well as the reading of the story. I will say the dinner party threw me for a loop. I did not expect that many people in the room. And of course, they were all new people, probably not reoccurring. Maybe, I hope not, because I will not remember their voices. With the exception of, well, I know Alistair's voice has changed. And there's a good chance Olivia's voice will change too if we see her in the future. Everyone else, more or less the same voice. But again, I want to thank you all for joining. We will have another reading stream next Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And again, if you happen to be a writer or a storyteller and you want to share your story, either on the reading stream or my future project on TikTok/Instagram, I'm not sure which one yet, feel free to leave me a message on Twitch, YouTube, or Blue Sky. And maybe one day TikTok or Instagram, we will find out. But again, thank you all for your support. I hope you I hope you enjoyed, not necessarily appreciate, but hope you enjoyed tonight's reading. And with that, I will see you all next time. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe and see you next time. Until then, take care and bye bye.